So welcome everyone to the September 5th meeting of the Bennington School District Board of Directors. Thanks to folks who came out because it's really warm in here, so thank you very much. So before we start with our agenda, I'd like a motion please to amend the agenda. We've had some information come in regarding Act 46 and the State Board of Ed. So could I just have a motion please to add a discussion with potential action on Act 46 to the agenda, please?
So moved.
We'll call it Shayla and Jeff approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the agenda as described, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, so it carries. So we'll put that just after the consent agenda. So agenda item number 1 is public comments. Mary Morrissey, if you would please step up, introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and fire away.
Yes, Mary Morrissey, Bennington. I have received a number of calls this past weekend from some parents and grandparents of children that were, I believe, last year taking a bus in the Dewey Street, Grant Street area. They were told that I guess that was being discontinued as of when school started last week, so they had no prior knowledge to it happening. I guess in the meantime, a courtesy bus has been, at least what I'm being told, has been put into place. But the courtesy bus means that if the bus is already full, then maybe the child will not be able to get on. And I don't know if that's at the home or if it happens at school or where this actually, so that at least they have a knowledge of, is it likely their child will have a safe ride home or not? Because it's kind of a little iffy, and maybe they're not understanding, but I would like to understand. So when I'm getting these calls as well, that we have a full understanding that their children are safely going to school and coming home from school on a bus, if that's indeed what's happening. So could someone maybe clarify or indicate what's going on?
So I'm not certain that any of us here are prepared to speak to the specifics of a bus route or specifics of a courtesy bus. I guess what I would suggest is that the parents, any parents or grandparents who reach out to you, be redirected to their schools.
And they did, and they also went to the superintendent, and that's what they're told, but there is still confusion about it, and we are in the first week of the school's year, so I would think we would want to make sure that parents and grandparents or guardians are very comfortable with what is happening to their elementary children.
Sure, and I think everyone would agree that the safety of getting students home is important.
Could the superintendent maybe respond to knowing what, because I'm sorry to say this and I mean no disrespect, I can't imagine that the board or that someone is not aware of who's getting on these buses, because technically we're responsible for children when they're on the buses and in the care of, that. So there's got to be, I would hope, some response possibly.
So if the superintendent wishes to respond, certainly I'll defer to that. But just generally speaking, Mary, particularly with the new changes in the policy about public comments, if we're not prepared to speak to an issue, can't really, it would not suit anyone to just guess at the issue.
Well, and I don't mean to interrupt. Some of the parents were going to come tonight, but a couple called and said they couldn't get babysitters. Okay. So they would have been here too, and again, you probably wouldn't have been able to comment. I'm not finding necessarily any fault. I'm just trying to make sure that everyone kind of has a clear understanding of what's going on going forward or not.
I have a policy that says I'm not supposed to respond to public comment, Mary, so I'll be glad to address it during the superintendent's report.
So would I be able to get a phone call to...
No, I'll address it during the superintendent's report because I'm allowed to speak then.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry, misunderstood.
No, thank you. And actually, I'll probably direct to the Director of Finance who oversees transportation and who has been working on this.
Hi there. My name is Sean Marie Oler, and I'm a resident of Bennington. And just to follow up on what Mary said, I looked today on the website trying to find the zones for the Bennington School District, and I cannot find the zones of, we each of the schools are. It's not listed under parents, it's not listed under, there's documents. So I've had the same thing. I work with parents of young children, and I do understand from many years of board policy that there is a zone in terms of walking, and maybe Superintendent Colquhoun will address that under his superintendent's report in terms of the walk zone and the mileage. I'm here because I had actually requested of Nick and the superintendent a Freedom of Information request for the nomination forms for the co-principals of Molly Stark. And while I have unbelievable respect for both Kate and Donna, I'm very disappointed that that this is the outcome of what's happened. And hopefully the board will maybe reflect on why people may not be applying, or why people are not coming, or why people are pulling out in terms of what the district represents in the newspaper and how people are treated. But when I asked for the nom forms, Nick responded very quickly to say that there were no nom forms, that BSD voted in August to go ahead and appoint co-principals. So I wrote back and said that I was really surprised, for both accounting reasons, transparency reasons, and payroll, why there would not be a nom form when in your current packet there are two memos to the effect that people are making more money because their FTEs have increased in both two employees within the BSD. So it would follow suit that the art teacher and the PE teacher are being increased, and their salaries and whatnot are public information. So Karen wrote back to me when I requested it, saying it was public information, and I'm astounded to find out that the co-principals are receiving $36,000 each apiece for their additional duties at Molly Stark. And while I understand that Donna is the point person and Kate's the backup person, I just can't believe that this board didn't reach out to previous assistants or principals. Molly has been shortchanged, and I will come back in October and submit a letter to why Molly has been shortchanged year after year after year. It started when we closed Catamount. The class sizes for the 2 and 3 following years at Molly were 26, 25, 26, and 27 in the elementary grades. Catherine McClure was the superintendent. She worked with the board to have those numbers come down. Molly Stark did no transition when Catamount closed and people came in. It was, I mean, I could go on. You know, the gym there is inadequate, and kids moving to the middle school have a disadvantage. You know, it goes on. I won't go on any further, but the AOE report, and mind you, it was SVSUI, talks about communication, transparency, and communicating with the public. So not adopting a nom form for co-principals just seems counterintuitive and counterproductive to the kind of work that you're trying to do. And I just will share my disappointment here, and I will follow up with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, very good. So moving on to the consent agenda. Can I please have a motion to accept the consent agenda as published, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jack Kelly. Any second for that, please?
Second.
Thank you, Chayla. Any discussion to accept the consent agenda as published? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, and it passes. The consent agenda is adopted. So moving into the new agenda item, the Act 46 discussion. So the State Board of Ed has published its draft articles of agreements that are going over to govern how these mergers will likely take place. The recommended representation model for our MUUSD talks about having 2 representatives from each town. So 2 representatives from Bennington, from Pownell, from Woodford, and from Shaftesbury. The articles of agreement that we had forwarded to the AOE as part of our Section 9 report talked about a representation model of 4 reps from Bennington and 2 reps from each of the other districts.
And 1 from Woodford.
And 1 from Woodford, thank you. And that reflected just the huge difference in the enrollment numbers So just taking a look at August, September enrollment isn't available, but August enrollment numbers. The BSD has 783 students, Pownell 217, Shasberry 214, and Woodford 23. And so the idea of having two representatives, for instance, two representatives from Bennington and two representatives from Woodford seems ill-advised. So what I would like to do, please, is to be empowered by this board to forward a letter to the State Board of Education recommending that the representation model for the merged school districts be include 4 reps from Bennington, 2 reps from both Pownell and Shasberry, and 1 rep from Woodford. Those, again, those were reflected. Those recommendations were reflected in the articles that were passed overwhelmingly by Bennington residents. So I would open that up. I would certainly accept a motion to empower the chair to write that letter, and we can certainly have that conversation, have further conversation in advance of that motion or after the motion is made.
I will point out that that is what Shasberry did at their board meeting. They support Bennington having 4 representatives. Woodford's meeting today was canceled for lack of a quorum, so I don't have their position on this. They're rescheduling hopefully for Monday.
Okay, thank you.
It's not the discussion yet, is it?
Well,
I was going to make the motion.
Thank you, Jim.
So moved.
Thank you. I'll
Now,
second.
is there discussion?
Thank you, Dan. So we have a second from Dan. Is there now any discussion on the motion that's on the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
As you know, that was always my big issue with consolidation was the record. And we were warned that they would probably do this. And I don't know if we're going to get anywhere with it, but
So
I hope you do.
You will see in the draft articles on the last page I gave you, I highlighted. So the proposal, the draft or the default articles of agreement that gives the 2, 2, and 2 does allow for change after 2020 by vote. Not by the board. The new board can't vote, but the public could vote to change that. I don't know what the likelihood or probability of that is, but they do have that in the default
And that's
agreement.
if they don't alter it for us.
That's if the board, because this is being generated to be presented to the board. The board has not voted on this.
But in all likelihood, it's going to be an issue. I mean, Bennington voters, of course, will probably vote for it. Shasberry voters who voted for the original merger will probably vote for it. I'm not sure about the outlying district.
Sure.
They didn't vote for it either one.
Yeah, you should, at that meeting on the 19th that the chair spoke about, you have like a 20-minute time slot, and in your time slot, you're there with Shasberry and Woodford because your Section 9 proposals were similar. Pownell has a separate time slot because their Section 9 proposal is basically to leave them alone and keep them the way they are. And North Bennington, as you know, is in a different situation too, so that they have a different time slot and because they have a different proposal under Section 9.
Any further discussion? So the motion on the table is to empower the chair to write the letter to the State Board of Education recommending that the representation model of 4, 2, 2, and 1. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries, and I'll get that letter out right away. So thank you for that.
Do you take comments under the, so in other words, if I have a comment on what your agenda item, am I allowed to speak? My understanding was if you had a comment on an agenda item, you could raise your hand.
So I'm not sure where that understanding came from, but I will say this, because this was an added agenda item, sort of using the chair's prerogative, if anyone would like to make a comment on this previously unposted agenda item, I'll allow for that.
So I agree with you 110%, and what I will say, being on the state board for 6 years and being on Mount Anthony and being sued by Mike Bethel in terms of representation, Steve Stitzel and I and Catherine went up to Armando, and we were under the impression, because of the Supreme Court ruling about the Mount Anthony board makeup, that we were under the impression, and so were all the lawyers at the time, that if MAU was to change its makeup, that one person, one vote would rule. What I saw happening over time on the state board was they were using that very precedent to do the opposite, which is to say you could alter it to do 2, 2, and 2. I don't think it's constitutional. I don't think Steve Stitzel will think it's constitutional, and I would totally take advantage. I went up last meeting, because I will not be here on the 19th in Vermont, and they were very, very clear about their time was like, they had a timer, ding, you got 3 minutes left, ding, you got 1 minute left, you're done. I would totally confer with your attorney and come up with language to present that, because this is the time that the state board is going to make alterations to whatever is being presented. And I think it's really, while I understand why the outlying districts might say that, it is totally not constitutional to do the 2, 2, 2, and 2. And Mount Anthony Board is not actually the right makeup either, but there's precedent set because of the way it was formed. Back in 1963, there was a number, 11, and there couldn't be more than 11. And so it was 2 for Bennington Town, 2 for Bennington this. There were 3, there were 2 different Bennington districts. So they had 2, North Bennington had 2, and Woodford decided to join at the end, and there were already 10 members. You can look it all up in history. I'm sure Mr. Culkeen, Superintendent Culkeen, has it in the file. I have it at home in the file under, the Mount Anthony, charter. It's all there. Steve Stitzel's been the attorney for well over 20 years. And I would advise you not just to write the letter, Chris, but to write the letter with counsel with citations on why that's not. Not that your letter wouldn't have any impact, but I would certainly go the extra mile.
Also, Chris,
Steve Stitzel is producing a letter for all of the issue on it. Okay.
Yeah, I want to amend my motion to include conferring with the board.
Yeah. So I pinky swear I'll do that. I don't know that we can amend a motion that's already been passed.
And I have been in contact with him, and he is drafting a response for all the issue.
But if you read, okay, I don't even remember that. But if you read the original thing, and Dan French sat there and said that it would probably be done by representation by numbers or however it goes, and you're going totally
The other opposite.
Completely
Right.
opposite direction.
Yeah, I do want to state, although I'm not an attorney, I do think the pinky swear is legally binding. I want to make that statement clear, Jen. But I was also struck by the very same thing, because part of the caution we had received was, hey towns other than Bennington, if you don't approve this merger, you're going to get totally wiped out in terms of representation.
Bennington's going to have 6 or 8.
Very surprised to see how it actually recommended. But anyway, so we'll get a letter written. Yes, in a way that's going to work. So any other discussion about this Act 46 tidbit? Okay, great, moving on. So we're going to move to finance. The first is the tax anticipation notice, and I would invite Renee to come speak to that, please.
Well, just wanted to note that, first of all, on the agenda, it does reference that it's a line of credit. The treasurer actually opted to go with the loan option. So it will be a full borrowing of the $1,080,000, which is a correction that needs to happen that I've made on the copy that you'll execute tonight if you so vote to do so. But along with the loan comes an investment account. So they're borrowing, or he's borrowing at a 2.95% borrowing rate, and we'll be investing at a 3.45. So hopefully we'll be able to make up the money that we incur through the debt. So with that, I do have the paperwork, which we need to have a motion, but also the motion should include a waiving of the reading of the resolution as well. And there are 3 places that need to be signed on here.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any other
I
questions.
make the motion that we borrow $1,080,000 from the Commodity Bank for anticipation of taxes. And what was the other thing you wanted?
With a waiving of the reading of the resolution?
Waiving of the reading of the note. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a second? please?
Second.
Thank you, Chayla. Any discussion about taking out the loan for $1,080,000 in advance of the tax receipts, along with a waiving of the reading of the resolution? Please signify by saying, first of all, before we vote, any discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, and it so passes. So we'll sign that. So Renee, should we wait to sign an official corrected copy, or is your correction sufficient?
I've noted it on here,
Okay.
and I'll check with the bank
Okay.
tomorrow to see if, if legal will accept it noted like this, and
Okay.
if not, then.
Can we sign that one tonight? And if we need to, we'll figure out a way to. Okay,
Yes,
great.
please.
Thank you. So the treasurer's report for July was attached to the packet. Next, I'd like to invite Nick up to speak. Nick from HR up to speak about the Administrators Association contract, please.
Thank you.
Okay, so the document that you have in front of you provides an overview of the tentatively agreed upon changes to the contract between the SVSU and our administrators, which are the principals and assistant principals for all of these school districts with the exception of Woodford. The proposed changes are as follows. It's a 5-year contract, which would be effective July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2023, which is, they've done 5-year contracts traditionally in the past, and we decided to stick with that. It would include retroactive pay increases to July 1. We bargained in good faith, finished in a timely manner, and so agreed to have retroactive pay increases to the 1st. Changes to the articles. Article 1, recognition. We removed references to North Bennington as they no longer have an administrator that would be represented by their association, so we removed references to North Bennington. Article 5, which is administrator rights and privileges. Previously, it stated that an administrator has a meeting with central office or the superintendent. They can bring representation to the second meeting, but not to the first meeting. So the language was updated so that an administrator can bring representation with them to any meeting to which they're called to, which is true of our teacher and our ESB. Article 7, the administrator personnel file. Previously, it had read that an administrator could, with written permission, allow anyone to access their file. We agreed to remove that and to essentially the new language is that the administrator, the superintendent, or the superintendent's designee have access to the personnel file, so they can no longer provide written consent allowing anyone to view the file. Article 9 was, there was some confusing language around a sabbatical leave about whether or not the request was for the request was to be approved a year in advance, or it was essentially a year or 2 years in advance. It was confusing. So we just clarified the date to mean a specific year so that there was not confusion. Article 11 is the health insurance section. So this is the plan that they've been operating under since January 1 when VHI introduced the 4 new plans. Their plan mirrors the teacher plan. They share cost sharing at 80-20, 80% from the district, 20% from the employer, from the employee. The out-of-pocket costs also mirror the teacher plan. I can get into this in as much detail as you'd like, but essentially they have the same options that our teachers do, which is what they have traditionally had prior. So this was not something new or different. It was mirroring what was agreed to in the teacher contract. And so I can elaborate on that if you'd like and talk about the health insurance plan options and how the cost structure is, but basically it's the same option that is presented to the teachers, and that's traditionally what they've been offered. So, and they've been on that plan since January 1 as we had a mid-year change. We had to move them onto that plan and that cost sharing. Earned time benefit, so there was some confusion, and we'll talk about it later. There was some redundant language in the contract. But essentially, they have an earned time benefit. They can receive payment for a portion of their sick time if they provide a specific amount of notice, should they be leaving, resigning, or retiring. It was previously a 60-day notice. We moved it to a January 6th notification, which is the same as the teacher contract. So we would be getting resignations and retirements by that January 6th deadline, and they would be eligible to be paid for the portion of their sick time that they have in their contract. Under the evaluation section, previously both the superintendent and the administrator had 10 days to provide a written response to the evaluation, and then the administrator had 10 days to provide a written response to the superintendent's evaluation. We added 5 days to both parties so that folks have 15 days to provide a written response. Everyone's busy, and it just gives them a little bit more time for that. Article 18, workday. The language in there essentially said that the administrators may at times have to work more than a standard workday. This was sort of commonly understood. They are exempt employees, so state and federal law already says that they work until the job is done. So we felt it was unnecessary language, so we removed it. The renewal section, they previously had a recall period of 3 years, meaning if an administrator was laid off due to a reduction in force, they could be recalled to the first available position in a 3-year time period. We reduced that to 2 years. It's just less of an administrative burden. And we also added some language, just clarified bumping rights should a reduction in force occur, so that there was no confusion about whether a assistant principal has bumping rights over a principal. We wanted to clarify that assistant principals have bumping rights within assistant principals, principals have bumping rights within principals and assistant principals, but it's not reciprocal, and we wanted to make sure that that was clear should something like that ever occur.
Can I ask a silly question? What's bumping rights?
So if there's a reduction in force, typically a more senior employee could bump a less senior employee out of their position.
Okay.
And so we just wanted to clarify bumping rights within principals and within assistant principals and talk about the crossover. Under the resignation section, there was some redundancy with the earned time benefit, and actually they contradicted themselves a little bit. So we tied that same January 6th deadline for a resignation that's tied to their sick time benefit. And we also added language that at the superintendent's discretion, he or she can grant a payout of accrued time under extenuating circumstances if they have to leave unexpectedly and the superintendent feels they warrant the payout. Duration and renegotiation is a 5-year contract, as I stated. We added an opener clause stating that the contract can be opened prior to the end of the 5 years should there be a major change to the health insurance plans offered, or if there's some form of district consolidation and the administrators and the boards agree they want to reopen and discuss certain aspects of the contract. And then last is the salary section. So previously, for many, many years, the administrator's salary grid has been tied to the teacher grid. Essentially, they use a base salary that is the top salary on the teacher's grid. So this year it would have been $70,135 because it was last year's top number. What that resulted in is year after year, in fact for the last 10 years, our administrator's base salary has gone up 1%. Because traditionally that top step for teachers is not advancing very far. Their salaries are increasing through step movement. Once they get to that top step 20 now, their increases are minimal. So because of that, our administrators were also getting on average 1 to 1.5% increases every year for the past 10 years. So we agreed it made sense to take them off of the teacher salary schedule and have a new base salary that's negotiated that works through their normal formula to determine what their salaries are. So we came up with 5 new base salaries that will result in a 3.7% increase in year 1, and then a 2.5% increase in years 2, 3, 4, and 5, rather than the 1 to 1.5% they've been getting for the last 2 5-year contracts. They were scheduled to get an increase of 2.4% this year because we added a new step to the teacher contract, so they were going to get a more significant bump than they traditionally had. So we're really only talking about a 1.3% increase over what they would have had, which the negotiating committee felt was reasonable given the history of increases they've received. And then the last item there is the 403B contributions. Currently, if an administrator has been with us for more than 5 years, they get a 5% match from the employer. The proposed language is if they've been here more than 5 years, they get a 6% match from the employer, and that is still assuming that they make a 5% contribution. So the motion we would be requesting is you make a motion to approve, ratify the contract, and to allow the board chair to sign the document that I have with me.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions for Nick about what he outlined?
Where can you see this contract?
So we have a draft version that we would have Chris sign.
Because I went online to see if I could find teachers or educators, and this one, because I know it's coming up tonight.
Yeah.
And I can't find any of the contracts.
So once ratified, our contracts are under Human Resources. So you'll see the teacher contract there. You'll actually see last year's ESP contract because we had 2 memorandums of understanding that we had to correct language to post the new ESP. But we do have the current teachers is on the website. And if you go under Human Resources, if you go under the Human Resources section on the left, you'll see the old ESP contract, that 1-year bridge ESP contract, the current teacher's contract, and the current administrator's contract.
Okay.
But we don't post the unratified versions until they get ratified, in case they don't, and then we have to go back. As with the ESP contract, we are just now finalizing all the language corrections. Had we posted an old version, an accurate version, we would have had a bad copy out there. So.
Any other questions for Nick? All right, that's.
It's only been 1 5-year contract. This would be the second.
So is there a motion, please, to ratify the contract as reviewed and to empower the chair to sign it?
So moved.
Thank you, Dan. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Chayla. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of ratifying the contract and empowering the board to sign it, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes, and here it is. Thank you.
Will the grid be on that, on the site when you put it up?
It's part of the contract, so you'll see the base salaries.
Thank you.
Their grid is a little bit different. It has the base salaries and then there's a formula that's based on education experience, building size, responsibility factor, that you can then use to determine what an administrator's salary is.
Great. Thank you, Nick. So the last is the Bennington Grant for Family Resource Center letter. And as this was explained to me by Renee earlier today, so there is well, Renee's right here, so I'm going to let her. Yes, please, Renee.
It's just an FYI. We were contacted by the town, who was in turn contacted by the state, looking for backup information for a grant that the town received in 1998, which was sub-granted to the Bennington School District to put the addition on Molly Stark for the Family Resource Center, which houses our pre-K program and family engagement services and the before and after school daycare. What they were looking for was documentation supporting the fact that a change of use has not occurred. So Kate drafted a letter, which they have accepted, and they have just asked that we do that annually, because if there's a change in use prior to January 1 of 2021, we will be under a repayment clause. So we want to make sure that we maintain use of that space as it currently is. The grant was $286,000 and change. So just wanted to let you know that that letter has gone to the town and will subsequently happen annually for the next few years.
Thank you, Renee. So moving on to educational matters, I'll turn the floor over to our principals. Hello.
Thank you. Welcome back to the new school year, to our communities meeting this evening. So I'm going to start and report out on some common events and themes and services and goals that we have throughout our 3 communities. First of all 3 of us, we've had successful starts to the new year, first day celebrations, including some assemblies to support our PBIS, positive behavior supports, initiatives. Our safety protocols implemented, and we feel very successfully. We feel that because we were very proactive in communicating with our families. We invited families in, and we communicated in various ways through our K-12 alerts, through our Facebook posting, and through letters directly mailed to families. So we also, I will share, families had concerns we encourage them to call us. We had meetings, how to support their learner to be able to enter independently, and we felt it was really a good start. So we're pleased. And staff was pleased at the new protocol that we have in place. Each of us did have a barbecue to invite our families, part of our continuous improvement goals for family engagement. We had them on separate nights. Thank you very much to the Abbey group, who did a fabulous job at barbecuing for all of our families. We had excellent turnout from our families and from our staff at all 3 evenings. We implemented and improved our process of posting on Facebook. And now that all of our schools have Facebook pages, thanks to the help of Derek Carson, who is our public information coordinator. Big shout out to him. He's been doing a great job at receiving information from our staff members if we need posting. And of course, his expertise is writing, so the postings far surpass, I will only speak for myself, as great written pieces for our elementary schools. So thank you, Derek. Our after-school programs are set. All 3 schools will begin the programs. We met during the summer. We aligned our programs 8 weeks each for the 3 sessions, which are supported initially through the board. The first one will begin on September 24th. So we're very excited about that, and information to parents should be coming home by next week. I'm also thankful. I want to share with my colleagues, Principal Edie Dunn and co-principal Kate Abbott. We are continuing the collaborative team efforts as in the past, and we are planning already to present to the board on monthly on educational issues, and so please look forward to that from the 3 of us. And now I will separate and provide you with some information for Monument. I want to thank the Monument staff sincerely. They are a phenomenal staff. I know that my colleagues here will also share the same sentiments about their communities, and Kate and I for the Molly community. But Monument did a great job. In June, we met as a community, setting schedules, supporting systems, and we were ready with our services to be in place day 1 for students. So incredibly proud of that, and thankful for our learners. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
So I'm just going to follow up with a few more notes about Molly Stark. Today we had our first faculty meeting, and I have greatly enjoyed meeting our faculty at Molly. They're a very committed and dedicated bunch. They've been in early setting up their classrooms, and they've been arranging individual meetings with any families who have asked to meet the teacher before the start of the school year on their own time. So amazingly dedicated group of educators. Next week we have our kickoff for our work for the year at Molly with Diana Malkin from Hill Literacy. She'll be in on the 12th to work with the K-1-2 group. And really our work around literacy this year focuses on our continuous improvement goal number 1. We want to see a 2 to 5% increase in student literacy achievement over the next 3 years. And we're really targeting on using our literacy materials, our core curriculum, to leverage high quality instruction for our Tier 1 learners. So all learners getting the benefit of that core literacy instruction. So Diana will be working with K2 on grades on the 12th, and then on the 13th, our literacy coach will be turnkeying that information for grades 3 through 5. So really helping us use our materials to create an optimal learning environment for literacy. We're also looking at, we at Molly have been taking the lead on skillful fire drills. So today we had our second fire drill of the year, following our first fire drill on Friday, where we actually have a roof tile system that had some construction over the summer, and it's been triggering our fire drill sensor. So we are really skillful at fire drills, and our teachers are right on the money, and so are our kids. Our fire drill today was actually at 2:43.
Oh my.
So right before dismissal, and it was a little warm. So we are really, we've gotten that one down, and we're way ahead of our Our fire drill routines.
And mine.
And mine.
Yes, we'll have another one to go. We do have the first seat. And then, last but not least, from Molly Stark, we would like to present the board with a picture of our Molly Stark learners that went to Nature's Classroom. They actually created this framed picture of themselves at Nature's Classroom. I had the opportunity to see them there in the venue, so I can say it was a wonderful program, and so this is for you as a board.
Thank you.
Well, I know we're almost out of time. I don't want these principal reports to go too long. So I second all of the information that Donna and Kate have shared with you. What a difference a year makes, because now our direction is truly set. And I've been working with staff, all staff, teachers and clerical staff and paraprofessionals, to really set up some systems that haven't been in place. So I feel really good about what we're doing moving forward. I think that, as Donna said, certainly we were concerned about how that kickoff would go for our new security measures that were taking place, and I'm pleased also to say that it really worked well. Carol Warren, my secretary, did a great job of answering phone calls and relaying that information when folks were called before school started. We also did use K-12 Alert, which I think we've used much more frequently this year. I will also add that the news that are on board this year, new receptionist, which is absolutely amazing. I don't know how we've gotten by without that position. Carol Morin remains as the school secretary. We have a new school nurse who's working wonderfully, a new special educator. And tomorrow we'll be interviewing for physical education position that popped up almost last minute. Pleased to say that I'm going to add 2 5th grade students to that interview team so that we can give some student voice. And both of their parents were thrilled that their children would be on board for that task. Lots of work in the building this summer, thanks Jerry Crew and his crew. We had to change some major classrooms, make some very significant changes to accommodate some students, and everything was up and running and ready to go. Our building also now houses the Associate Director of Special Education, Paul DeMarco, so we made some space for him so that he can be on site. We have a high population of special ed, and we need a lot of his direction. And we have, once again, as Donna said, the BSD schools planning together to make a difference. So our alignment of what's happening at Van Now, Molly Stark, and Monument, I think, is really a soundbite that we want to emphasize over and over as we have these meetings. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions for our principals?
That's my only question. Sorry,
No, so go ahead.
We are going to implement that as part of the security measures. Has that happened yet, or are we just changing the ability for the parents to come in? I think we were going to be doing the identikit or that technology.
So part of, So part of the security protocols and updates does implement identikit, and that is a system, it's a computer system of programs that will be at the front of each of our schools, where it will have visitors and volunteers log in, an identification badge is printed, goes on a lanyard, and what we have said to our families is, we want our families a part of our community. Please understand that this is a arrival to school protocol. Complete your background check, connect with your teachers, organize your volunteering status, be a part of our field trips with that background checks. We are looking forward to having families in our buildings and supporting the community that we have.
So has that been implemented, or is that to come?
The program was part of our safety grant, which was just recently awarded.
Okay.
I think that it was discussed at the last board meeting, and so I believe those things have been ordered and they're in the works, and they're coming fairly soon, and we're very excited about them.
Excellent.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, let's have Jody go next. Jody was up next.
I just had a quick question for Kate, who referenced the 2 to 5% increase in student achievement for literacy. And I was just wondering what measure, a combination of measures, or is there one measure that you were using to gauge that?
So that's from our SDSU CIP plan, and that's for the state assessment.
Okay.
Okay, we try not to use acronyms as much.
No, I was going to tell her go ahead because I have all that.
You may.
I know.
Because you're in the field, but we have a wider audience watching. So.
Do you want to know our assessment?
Yes, I was wondering, right, to see the 2 to 5% increase, what assessment, one assessment tool or numerous to gauge that 2 to 5% increase?
Your assessments. So K2, we use FastBridge, which is our assessment tool. 3 through 5, we use MAPS, measures of academic progress. We also take into consideration our SBAC testing, which is our state testing. So that's the Smarter Balance Consortium assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a lot. And one more question was, just to clarify, when you were speaking about background checks and inviting families into schools, does that mean that a person who did not pass a background check would not be allowed in the school to visit a parent or?
Pass a background check. I believe that is, of course, vetted through our central office. I know that in the past, if there is a reason that they don't pass it, they do have the right to have communication with the superintendent regarding that. That's a confidential issue between the individual and the superintendent. However, that does need to be passed in order for parents to volunteer or guardians or members to come into our community and volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
So to piggyback on that, not just enter the school, but to, just to participate in like the field trips and stuff like that. Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure that was clarified.
I kind of would like to applaud Bennington for getting a person from special ed into your school.
Collaborative.
Yeah,
well, I can't take all of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like adding another teacher there, too, in a way.
All the more the merrier.
Well, I think it's a great idea from whoever did it.
It's a directive from the superintendent. It was always, finding room was the issue. It was always the intent to move them out of Central and into, but the schools are tight for room. So.
Yeah, we go through closets.
Anything more for our principals? Okay, thank you all. Thank you very much. Policies none. On to the superintendent's report, please.
Well, we've covered a lot already. Act 46 was on there. Opening days was on there. But because it was a question, I am going to talk about busing. So I did have to make a decision this week when it was brought to me by the Director of Finance and by Mike Gardner from Dufour that there were a group of students that weren't eligible to ride a bus. They were in the walking zone. And one of the points of confusion might be that there are two different distances, what a kindergarten student can walk and what then a first grader can walk. So that courtesy that they might be talking about is what my instruction was, that we can go ahead and pick them up, but carefully monitor how full the bus is getting. With the, and though Mike Gardner from Dufour and Renee's office, because we have tracking software that links our student information system with a system called Versatran that actually directs the bus routes and actually generates the bus routes, so we can see how many pickups are along those routes. So we're not anywhere near capacity right now, so that's why I said it's good. I would rather give them a ride even though they're in a walking zone. But there's no promise that can't continue. So what we said, if that point, then we would come back to the board, decide if the board wants to find funds for an additional bus to continue that service. Right, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that summation.
Okay. If there's space, we're picking them up for now, but, you know, if
Yeah.
the population
So,
changes.
so they're not, under the guidelines, they're not eligible for a bus, but we are picking them up from that neighborhood, that stop.
Chris? Jim, if we get too many kids on the bus, are we going to notify these parents ahead of time?
Oh, yes, yeah, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't say, hey, Monday morning, you can't get picked up. And our intent would be that we would come here first and say, what do you want to do? You know,
Okay.
do you want to put another bus on, and here's what it's going to cost, so. And it's a half a mile, a kindergarten student can walk up to a half a mile, and a first grader 3/4 of a mile. And because it's an arc circle away from the school, there are a few streets that, you know, bulge out of that circle, and because it's, you know, it's not a perfect layout of a street. Okay.
Thank you. So I would ask that if, I see some hands going up, the attendees here tonight, I would ask that any further questions be directed to the superintendent or to Renee beginning tomorrow morning, please.
I have just one little question.
Please.
It's just a question, and maybe Dan could help us too. How about the stairway from Apple?
The walkway.
Yeah.
We're still trying to value engineer that so that we can build that next year.
Yeah. Came in a lot higher than.
You say it's next year.
Yeah,
so-
the bid, we actually bid it out this year, and the bids came in extremely high. I'll just say that. And we're trying to figure out a way forward.
So that's what he means by value engineering. They kind of go back and review the plans and see how they can reduce the cost and still get it
We do
done.
intend to go back out to bid this early winter, and hopefully we'll have a better bidding environment and with our changes.
So I want to be careful
That won't
going
help
too
Ben.
far afield from the posted agenda items, so I think this is important, and I don't want to give it short shrift, nor do I want to catch Dan. But buses under the superintendent's report, not as its own separate agenda item. It's important, Jackie, and
So the other thing I want you aware of about buses is the SVSU is doing bus safety drills. The first one was at Monument today with Vic Milani, the SVSU safety instructor. Bennington Police and the Bennington County Sheriff's Department was there also. So that's going to happen at every elementary school in the district, and I think that is important. It's not just addressing, you know, we've done in the past the traditional bus evacuation drill. This is actually going to address more behavior on the bus, behavior at how to stay safe at a bus stop, and things like that. So there is that will continue through that. As I said, first one was today. As part of some of our opening day, we did have an SU, so we had building days and we had the SU day on Tuesday, the 28th, and you know, we did things traditional there as recognition of service awards, some remarks from the superintendent, and the theme for the day, and it's really part of what we're working on this year, is assessing with a growth mindset. We had a nationally renowned speaker, Dr. Leanne Young, came in, and her theme was really all about inclusion and help us as we march towards a change in our special education model. The following day, there was a group of educators here that, along with the Vermont NEA, began the first of a 2-hour session, and there will be more on racial equity. And it's something that is also on our agenda this year for professional learning for our staff. Tomorrow, speaking of professional learning, the Office for Civil Rights will be doing a training of all principals, administrators. That'll take place in 2 sessions at Central Office, 1 to 3 and 3 to 5, so depending where that fits in on your schedule. So that is happening tomorrow. So we heard about safety protocol, safety change procedures. I just wanted to say that I think it's gone reasonably well. We have gotten a couple of phone calls. I've received 2 emails and 1 phone call. Now they say that I'll get more tomorrow. I know the principals have heard some. I just want to say it's not about keeping parents out of our buildings. We welcome them, and you've heard the procedure for how we can welcome them. For me as superintendent, the decision really came down when we said, think of it, during the day, we have a sign-in procedure. The door is locked. People can't just come in. For this brief window in the morning, We open up everything, and anybody can walk in. The concern for us is, how do we know everybody left? How do we know that everybody is out of the building? Nooks, crannies, bathrooms, closets. It's not that far-fetched. And, you know, you've heard the adage in real estate, you know, it's location, location, location. When it comes to school and our students, it's safety, safety, safety. The only way that I can be assured that our students are reasonably safe here during the day is making sure that there's nobody in this building that isn't authorized to be here or in any of our buildings. So that was the drive to it. And as our principal said, I think it's been well received. And you heard Donna give her shout out to Derek. He did a great job on some questionnaires that went out on explaining why we were doing this. And I also want to, thank Vic Milani for his work on this. He's also done a lot of one-on-one explaining to parents who were concerned. And by and large, the feedback I'm getting is when it's explained to them why this happened, some are actually thanking us for doing that. So that's pretty much it. I'd like to get Act 46, but I think we covered that. So.
Very good. I'm going to add a little bit more, but I'll get there. So moving on to the chair reports. So just the BSD welcomes back all the students.
Chris, I'm sorry.
Okay,
could I just ask one, just a suggestion, actually. When you mentioned the SVSU opening days, I would just like to, I remember in the past that boards were invited to those days. And going forward, I think it's nice when board members, it doesn't have to be all of us, but when we can hear the speakers, hear the information, and know what direction schools are moving in. So just something to think of for next year.
So it was a conscious decision because of capacity of how, course. But I will consider if that's possible. But we really didn't even have enough seats for all the staff that were there that day. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Safety, safety, safety. I'm going to get on my high horse again. Can we have a discussion about resource officers? Thank you.
I'll put that on for October. Yep. I want to make it look like I can type fast.
Yeah, that doesn't say.
Did you really type anything, or you just hitting keys?
Okay, very good. So moving on to the chair's statement. So just the BSD wants to welcome back all the learners to this school year. And just noting that for some, like, this is the culmination of their elementary career, and for some that's just starting. But just we hope them a year of curiosity and growth and excitement. I want to just express gratitude to the faculty and staff and administrators who worked throughout the summer to make it work. And it's that dedication to create that nurturing, positive school environment that really makes the difference. And we are grateful for all that work that goes into it. Here's the little bit of extra Act 46 stuff that in looking back at the minutes, I don't think this has ever expressly been said in this setting. So I just wanted to put it on the record. And some of this will just be recapped. But again, on November 7th of last year, when the merger failed to pass in the required number of towns, it triggered the requirement for the boards of education to submit a set of recommendations to the Secretary of Education as to what to do next. And this was in fulfillment of Section 9 of Act 46. So on December 22nd, this board voted to recommend to the Secretary that the articles of agreement generated by our own study committee be adopted and effectuated in full. And this board's vote was informed in part by the fact that the Act 46 merger plan passed in the town of Bennington by a nearly 3-to-1 margin. One aspect of the recommendation was to maintain the tax incentives that had been offered by the Agency of Education in the early stages of Act 46 as a means of promoting efficient mergers across the state. That was part of our recommendation, to give us those tax incentives even though we were late to the party. But in the Secretary's report on the various Section 9 proposals that came out a few months ago, it is clearly stated that Act 46 does not authorize the state board to modify any existing tax structure. So in other words, despite the affirmative vote in this community, and despite the recommendation of this board, tax incentives can now not be realized. And obviously the opposite would have been the case had the merger been approved by the required number of towns back on November 7th. So that's a drag. But without a final plan from the state board, this board can't speak to what the tax implication of a merger is going to be, because we don't really know what it's going to look like. But I did want to just put out that I personally take some solace in the idea that one of the prime motivators for Act 46 was to increase the financial efficiency within districts. And so I think it's expected that some savings will be seen within our community following any merger that the State Board of Education sort of imposes. So I don't know that that had all been stated clearly here, so I just wanted to put that on the record. And the last bit for my report, there were some comments made at the outset of this meeting that the decision to have co-principals at Molly Stark was due to an inability to attract a candidate. It was due to an inability to attract a candidate based on, I believe the quote was, how people are treated and how the district is shown in the public. I just found that to be intentionally antagonistic, and it ignores the fact that Dr. Mujit's departure from our district was unexpected, and it was late in the season, and it deprived us of an opportunity for sort of a full recruitment efforts. So to say that it was, to suggest that it was due because of how people are treated just doesn't ring true necessarily. So I want to put that out there as well. So that's it for my chair report. I want to kick it over to agenda item listed as 8, is really 9, which is the SVSU report. Specifically, we wanted to start with a weapons position statement. And I'm going to recite the weapons position statement that's been generated by the SVSU. The Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union and its member school districts value the work performed every day by all personnel, including teachers. School personnel consistently perform tasks beyond their job descriptions. The SVSU will not ask these personnel to accept the additional responsibility to carry arms. The SVSU will not support arming teachers, volunteers, or other school personnel. While the Gun-Free Schools Act discourages weapons in the school environment, it does allow for exceptions under certain conditions. The SVSU will acknowledge an exception only for trained police officers and will comply with directives in Policy 5089, which is entitled Weapons Prohibition Other Than Students. So I believe, Shayla, you're going to speak to the weapons position specifically, please.
Yeah, so we brought this to the board, I don't know, a few months ago, as it was brought to the SVSU board to basically have that statement be put out there on behalf of the SVSU. And when we talked about it a few months ago, everybody wanted to kind of take some time to read the statement, make some decisions, read the policy. And so it was brought up again at our latest SVSU meeting, and they just asked again that we make sure that it goes out to the individual boards for us to kind of make a vote on whether we are for or against the SVSU putting this position statement out there. It's not a change in policy or anything like that. It's just a position statement in regards to weapons and teachers.
All right, so could I please have a motion to accept the weapons position statement for the BSD?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie, and we'll take Jody as the second. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the weapons position statement for the SVSU, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So we will notify Nelson over the SVSU. So for Shayla or Dan, any other updates from the SVSU?
Dan, I think you're going to do it.
I think we covered most of it. Obviously, Laura Boudreau is appointed assistant superintendent. I think everybody knows that by now. So, and the policy, a minor amendment to the public participation at board meetings policy was adopted. We discussed Act 46 as we did tonight. And there was Nelson Brownell read into the record a letter from Donna Leap regarding a summary of SVSU initiatives between the years of 2012 and 2018, which I thought was very informative. Shayla, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Nope. And we talked about the weapons statement.
Yes, great. So that brings us to number 9, just FYI, those include the SVSU student enrollment, which will be available at the next meeting, the budget status report, which is posted on the website, as well as some adjustment made to full-time equivalencies, specifically the PE teacher and some art teachers. So if there's no comments on that, I would entertain a motion to move into executive session as per 1 VSA subsection 313A3 which is to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during the open meeting. If I could have that motion, please.
So moved.
What are you moving?
So moved.
What are you?
Oh, moving to go into executive session.
Very good. Can I have a second, please? A second. Thank you, Jackie Crew. Any discussion? Hearing none.
You're going to invite Edie Dunn.
Yes, we're going to be inviting Principal Dunn in as well. I don't anticipate any action taken after executive session. You certainly feel free to stick around if you'd like. All those in favor of moving into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are now in executive session. Thank you.